You know what makes me most excited about artificial intelligence? When I see viral posts on, you name it, Facebook, on LinkedIn, whatever platform that you're looking at, about how somebody is outing somebody else for using artificial intelligence. We see all these things now. I see this a lot where somebody has some sort of prompt that's included in a research paper that shouldn't have been included, and all of a sudden it's a rejection. And then, people get really upset about it, or questions about how do you deal with, that people are using artificial intelligence. How do we actually deal with this? Should this thing be rejected? All of the comments, or a lot of them, are, oh, how could they? This is horrible. You know, all of these are moments where I get really excited. It even makes me uncomfortable and weird, right? Like, I know that. But anytime that there is these weird moments that you're uncomfortable, it's almost always that we're going through one of the most dramatic shifts that we've seen in a long time. This dates back to Galileo, um, at least that I know of, right? There's probably many other circumstances in history, but that's one of the ones I fixate on, where he essentially started applying this new technology, this telescope thing, and started looking at the world, right? Telescopes were not that powerful at that time. I think it was like 3 to 10 times sort of magnitude, and you start seeing weird things that are happening in the sky, and people get really upset. Unfortunately, Galileo did not benefit from that. Um, but, going through all of these moments where there is a technological transition, another one that is great is the typewriter. People were really, really upset when they got really good at using a typewriter, and then they had to start using WordPerfect. And it was really confusing. I remember that. I was still pretty young at that time. I was probably in sixth or seventh, eighth grade, somewhere around there, where there was that transition. And I remember all of the teachers being really kind of like upset that they had to learn all these new things. So it was really frustrating. Um, I remember all of these moments that are, clear transitions where we're like, oh my gosh, right? The horse, right? The transition from the horse to the car, where people were upset about, what do we do with all the horses, right? How is that going to, what are we supposed to do with all these things, right? The transition to, um, to start using, um, I don't know, let me see, to start using, disposable diapers. Right now, I know it's a little bit of a bad analogy because it's a problem, but, many people were upset that it's not a purist thing, right, of using these things, and it's still a contentious conversation today. I think about, the transition to using, um, let me see, the transition to using, electricity, right? Like, people were really upset at that time and people did not want to make this transition because it was uncomfortable. I remember when, Airbnb first came out, where there was moments where many of the people in the hotel industry thought that their jobs would be replaced, and there was a ton of pushback. The same with taxis, for example, right? And there was some replacement, but I think a lot of taxi drivers would probably say, people that would go into that profession would probably say that they actually enjoy Uber more. Um, and they did for a long time, right? Like, there is all of these things in our lives where there is just this great debate, and people get really upset about it, and we don't know how to deal with it for a while. And then we make this transition. Music, for example. I remember when Napster first came out, and it was like, oh my gosh, right? It's going to destroy everything. And Napster was this application that provided free music. And it did, it did die for a moment, right? Napster disappeared, but the principle remained that this could be done. The Apple Music Store came out, and then we have Spotify, and Pandora. There's all these moments where there is weird, uncomfortable things that happen, and there's a lot of debate, and we just don't know what to do with it. So people get uncomfortable, they get upset. Um, that's how we deal with uncertainty. That's how we deal with ambiguity is we get that sort of weird motion that's going on in the pit of our stomach. And some of us, we do the flight or flight response. I have a very much more of a tendency to flight, where I just like hide, or freeze, or, want to sort of just get away from the situation. But a lot of people have the response of, I'm going to fight and I'm going to get angry in these moments. And what I'm saying with this is, that essentially what we're dealing with is a really ambiguous kind of moment that nobody really knows how to deal with this. And I think as people that are more in this profession, right, that are more central to knowledge generation, researchers, PhDs, these kind of professors and students and stuff, we we get we feel this more right now, this transition, but it's going to happen vastly across all of the knowledge domains that we have, from physicians to to even architects, to eventually, when robotics start getting a little bit better. We're still a little ways away, I think. Robotics start getting better, we're going to start seeing that even within things that we thought were impossible to use this, like manual labor, for example. So I think we're going through these moments of, what do we do with this? How do we handle it? So one way to take it is, it's a threat. And, for some of us it is, right? Like, you could view it as a threat, and it could be exciting, right? Like, as me as a researcher, I should be really, really upset because it's going to take away from a lot of my job. But another way to take this is like, oh, what if we use this to leverage what I already do really well, and I can pick and choose the things that I just don't really want to do? Can we keep pushing this out and building bigger and grander and crazier things, right? Like, can we actually start leveraging some of these things, particularly as artificial intelligence becomes stronger and better? Can we actually leverage this so that it becomes more of, so that we individually can do more, right? And exponentially grow our productive capacity. And I could see, as we start doing this, right? Like, there is this fear that is going to sort of overtake what we actually do. I think we're a ways away yet from that happening. I don't think it's not it's not like in the realm of possibilities. I think there's still a lot to be said about that. But one way that we can do this is to harness it in such a way that we leverage it, that we look at this as like, oh, this is not scary. Actually, when people start using these things, we should encourage them to use it. And, that often what I hear that sort of pushback is, well, what about the laws? How are they going to handle that? The laws are there to follow. They're not there to lead, right? And that's one of the flaws that we have, and it's very difficult to deal with, is that the laws are there not to define what we actually do at this moment, but to follow how we're supposed to do things in the future. And that is a very difficult thing. And we have to just realize that, yes, we're always, and this is the other thing to realize, we're always in the realm of ambiguity. There's always moments where the laws are not going to hold in all situations, and it's not ever clear. And so we need to start embracing things more, and realize that, yeah, you know what? This is just a weird moment. It's uncomfortable for many of us, but let's just try. Let's see what happens. Because ultimately, we're not going back to the way it was, right? I hate to say that, but it's not going to happen. And what we have to do is simply say, all right, well, if that's the case, let's bravely go where nobody has gone before. Just like when we went across the ocean. All of the Europeans and the Africans went across the ocean, made that long trip. So, all right, let's go do this. Just like when you have a baby for the first time, just like when you kiss for the first time, it's an all right, let's do this. Let's figure this thing out and get going. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.